You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I'm Ethan Haristadoulou, and after another doubleheader in Monday Night Football action where the Titans took down the Miami Dolphins and the Detroit Lions battled some demons and buried them, taking down the Seahawks in Detroit to wrap up week number 4. It is time again to dive into this week's power rankings, go through all 32 teams, through my tier list here, and I feel like I need to stress this because I've had people now for the last few weeks say the same thing to me. Watch the video. The rankings you are currently seeing on the screen right now are last week's rankings. I cannot stress that enough. I would not just reveal the whole entire thing right out of the gate. This is week 4's rankings. We're heading into week 5, so we're doing week 5's rankings. I invite you all to comment down below. Let me hear your thoughts on this past weekend's games. If you made picks, how did you do? Where do you think everyone stacks up? What do you think about my rankings? I would love to hear from you all. Comment down below. But we will start by resetting this week's rankings, beginning at the bottom, working our way up to the top, and sitting at the number 1 overall candidate section. We have ourselves at 32, the New England Patriots; at 31, the Jacksonville Jaguars; at number 30, we're looking at the Titans. The Browns sit at number 29, the Panthers at number 28, and then the New York Giants sitting at numbers 27. The Patriots at 1-3, holding the number 32 spot despite the fact that the Jaguars right above them are at 0-4. This really comes down to just the state of play we are actually getting from the New England Patriots right now. Yes, they are 1-3. They took advantage of a Bengals team that is honestly still trying to work through some of their issues despite the fact they got their first win this past weekend. They took advantage of that. They did catch a win, but over the last couple of weeks now, just getting blown out of the water by their opponents, more so the Jets than the 49ers, oddly enough. But regardless, back-to-back blowout losses. There is a refusal of going and swapping quarterbacks right now in New England as well, which, to be fair, with how the offensive line has looked over there, I understand the reasoning as to why. But with everything just kind of staying put as is and what we've gotten from New England these last couple of weeks here, weeks 1 and 2 feel like more than just a couple of games away. And the Patriots, in my opinion, just based off of play and where they stand right now, bottom team in the league is how it looks for me. The Jaguars right above them at 0-4. 1 possession losses to everyone except the Bills. They've been tight. They've been competitive, but they are 0-4. But now it feels like things are starting to get a little bit ugly. And the thing that really stood out to me, and everyone's kind of talked about it at length already, but Doug Peterson and the way he responded to questions being asked him in that post-game interview about his job security, and also the statements that he made that kind of sounded like he was putting blame on the players, saying that, them as coaches on the sideline can't go out and make those plays happen. I'm kind of worried about what the direction is that this is all heading in right now. It's unfortunate because, again, this team has been competitive. They're 0-4, yes, but there are a few plays breaking their way away from being a team that could have been 3-1 at this point if those plays did break their way. But they're 0-4. The head coach is blaming players right now, and he's getting asked about his job security. And right now it feels like there is a possibility that we're staring down a Doug Peterson split from Jacksonville sooner rather than later. The Titans at 1-3, moving up a couple of spots. I had them at 32 last week here. Hats off to them, getting the monkey off their back, getting a win here, getting out of the winless category at 1-3, a ground and pound approach. And crazily enough, Mason Rudolph, of all people, coming in, taking advantage of a down-and-out Miami Dolphins in Miami. The defense took, honestly, and it just felt like between what appears to be just a very complicated offense in Miami, took advantage of a Snoop Huntley that just looked very overwhelmed. And with the way that the Titans came into this game here, and this is without Jeffrey Simmons on top of that, they came into this game and they were just extremely aggressive. They were not afraid to get after him, and they made him uncomfortable. And it showed throughout the entirety of this game with just how, I don't want to say inept because that's a really strong word, but just how inefficient and just how poor the offense looked in Miami. And then on the offensive side of things, ground and pound approach, like I said, felt like the Titans of old, to be honest with you here. Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears racking up nearly 130 yards and a couple of scores on the ground. Felt like Titans football, to be completely honest with you all, but hats off to them. You get the win. You are now 1-3 with, an uncertain future throughout the rest of the season. Bye week coming up. Will Levis dealing with an injury now. We'll see what happens there, but you at least have a win to go along with what has been a tough season to this point. At 29, the Browns at 1-3, a block in the back kills the Amari Cooper go-ahead touchdown late in that game here, and ultimately at that point, it felt like whatever last gasp was left in the Browns, that getting called back just kind of sucked the life right out of them, even as the Raiders felt like they were giving the Browns every opportunity to potentially come back and steal that game even after that. It's just unfortunate because the defense did enough, and honestly, your offense did kind of do what it needed to do to take that lead, but just a really unfortunate penalty on a massive play that would have potentially swung the game your way, because it's not like Las Vegas put up any more points following that. It was just a holdout until the finish line kind of game here. Nick Chubb's return is imminent, so there are things to at least be somewhat excited about. It sounds like the practice window for him to return from the IR has been opened up, so at some point within the next 3, I believe, weeks or so is how long that window is. There's the potential that we see Nick Chubb back on the football field, or at least getting ready to do so. And Deshaun Watson stinks, but that's where Cleveland is. At 28, the Panthers 1-3, Andy Dalton revenge game ultimately ending in a loss here. The offense continuing to look better in a post-Bryce Young era. And at this point here, the question is really fair to ask, what was actually holding this offense back? And I'm seeing a lot of people come out here and now defend Bryce Young and say that, he didn't get the opportunity to learn and grow and yada, yada, yada. He was the number 1 overall selection, and I'm not going to sit here and act like the Carolina Panthers situation, even last year or this year now, is necessarily the best by any means, but there is definitely a conversation to be had at this point here about just CJ Stroud, not CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and where he stands as a quarterback to this point, and just what's going to happen in Carolina going forward. Andy Dalton has at least made this offense not, I don't want to say worth watching, but watching worthy, I guess you could say. And at this point, I don't know how you go back to Bryce Young in this situation. I really do not. On top of that, on the defensive side of things, struggling on that end of the football. You lost Shaq Thompson, for the rest of the season with an Achilles injury. This will be a team that is down and out for the majority of the season. I have them in that number 1 contenders group because at this point here, if they're not picking number 1, they're probably picking somewhere in the top 5, but they will be in contention for it. But at least the Panthers can be a little bit easier to stomach as you watch them play football. I would say at least for the time being. We'll see how long Andy Dalton holds up. Offense took a step back compared to the explosion that we saw last week, which is typical, I guess you could say, with how things like that work out when you get that quarterback swap. But not looking too good for the Panthers right now at 1-3. Giants at 1-3, just a valiant effort, I would say, altogether. 5 field goals aren't going to win you a football game, but there are at least some things you can take away from this game and think, there's steps in the right direction that can be made here. The defense looked solid in the second half. You hold Dallas to just 6 points, and on top of that, you kept the game close for your offense to put themselves in a position to win. They just could not get themselves into the end zone, which at this point here, I'm surprised that there are still people that are New York Giants fans that are defending the situation with Daniel Jones at quarterback and him deserving to still be in there, and it's not his fault that, the team is where they are. I don't want to put all of the weight on Daniel Jones. I think there's a lot of mismanagement and just there's a lot of things going poorly in New York right now, but if there's one thing you can take away from this all the nonsense that's going on with the Giants, that has been the Giants for the last few years, Malik Neighbors feels as legit as they come because he is the only real true threat that defenses have to scheme up for every single week. And he's still racking up double-digit receptions, over 100 yards. He looks every bit of the part as a number 1. You just have to hope that the Giants can build something around that, hopefully going forward. Moving out of the number 1 overall and into the struggle bus category here, we're looking at 5 teams with the Dolphins at number 26, the Rams at 25, Arizona Cardinals are sitting at 24, Chicago Bears at 23, and the Bengals rounding out the group at number 22. All 5 of these teams, except for the Bears, sitting at 1-3, who are 2-2 for them. But the Dolphins at 26 here, not even Snoop Huntley could save them. I saw a lot of people, talking about how great this was going to be for them. here. I even had somebody say to me that Snoop Huntley was a poor man's Lamar Jackson and a stud. I don't really know if that's the case. It's been fun watching him do his thing, and I know he got selected to a Pro Bowl and all that, and that was a weird season for that. Mac Jones got brought into that same Pro Bowl as well because everyone decided they wanted to sit out. But I will say that as far as Miami goes, they are in such an ugly spot, and they will not sort themselves out, and we will not know truly what they are until Tua makes his return. So this team's in rough shape for the time being. I don't really think it's going to get that much better until he gets back. So hopefully it's sooner rather than later. I think he has at least one more week where he needs to be on the IR before he can be taken off and be even considered to come back. So keep an eye on the Dolphins. This is a team that they're probably better than 26 if Tua's there, but just the state that they currently look over the last couple of weeks, they are a bottom feeder team and do not look good. The Rams at 25 at 1-3. The defensive line definitely misses Aaron Donald. This is one of those things that it sucks that he's not around, because I really think if he's on that defense, this unit maybe has like another level to it that they could work with here. But beyond that, I mean, the offensive line continuing to struggle. You have a litany of just skill position players that are all out. Like, this is a team that is just so hurt, so down and out. And what can you do? And I mean, when you look at just the struggles that they had trying to stop DeAndre Swift this week, who totaled up 93 yards and a touchdown on the ground, then Matthew Stafford on the other end, the O-line, allowing pressure to get through. He gets sacked 3 times. He throws a really uncharacteristic, just like bad interception, which is not really typical of Matt Stafford. It's just a mess of a game, a mess of a situation that they're currently in right now. And one of those teams that, again, until they get healthier, you can't really decide what this team is because they're missing so much right now. The Cardinals at 24, overall a defensive collapse is the best way I can describe their performance in here. The offense struggled they basically shot out of a cannon and then just fell flat on their face from that point forward. It was pretty surprising because I thought we were in for a shootout in that game, and when we had Arizona score, Washington score, I was like, all right, here we go. It's going to be one of those games this week, one of the higher point totals, things like that. Still was a higher point total, just all the scoring via Washington, but the defense, 400 yards allowed, 4 total rushing touchdowns altogether. They had absolutely no answers for Jaden Daniels, and who out to he went 85% completion when he's now sitting as like one of the best completion percentages to start a season through 4 games ever. So, I mean, just the defense did not come up to the task. And this is one of those things that is it goes back to what I have said about Arizona, even prior to the season starting. One of the more talent depleted defenses, I would argue, as far as just roster construction goes. And this is one of those things that it's not going to get better this year. It's one that you hope gets addressed coming into this offseason, and you just kind of make do with what you can for the time being. But I have a really hard time believing that the Arizona Cardinals, in the current state that they're in the current shape, especially on the defensive side, that they're going to be able to hang in there for a lot of games like they were at certain points last season. The Bears at 2-2, all about DeAndre Swift, leads the team in both rushing and receiving. Not too often you see a running back do something like that, but leading the team in both rushing and receiving here. The defense, though, disruptive, and I really want to point out Jaquan Brisker, because this guy's one of my favorite safeties in the league right now, and for him to come out 12 tackles, 2 for a loss, he had a sack, he had an interception. He was a huge proponent in why this Bears team was able to get one over on the Rams this past week, and ultimately is the reason why they are sitting at 2-2 with that game ceiling in off of Matthew Stafford. I think that the Bears, the way they are currently set up right now, if they can just keep the passing game short and find success like they found this past week in the running game, they can be competitive. I put the Bears somewhere around like 9-8, 8-9. I think is like a realistic situation for them come season's end. 10-7 would be like the ceiling that I would put on Chicago, but I really like the idea of them going somewhere like 9-8. If everything is falling in their favor with Caleb Williams in the current state of that offensive line that is still not perfect by any means, again, short, quick passing game, just get the ball out of Caleb Williams' hand as fast as possible so he doesn't have to sit back there and stress about the pressure coming after him. You lean into your ground game. Your defense is so good. You don't have to put up a lot of points. You just have to protect the ball, control the clock, and on top of that, play really good defense. And again, this is a team that could very easily win 9, maybe even 10 games, and maybe even sneak into a wild card spot, depending on how the NFC shakes itself out. But they have to take care of the ball, their quarterback, and things have to be simplified offensively. And I think we saw some of that this week, and that's why they came out with another win. The Bengals at 1-3, defense remains an issue for this team here. That is something that is definitely worth pointing out here. They're currently tied for 5th most in points per game allowed at 26 at this moment here. So the defense is definitely something to keep an eye on here. But thankfully, you saw the offense come to life. This is what we were kind of expecting from this team coming in. Jamar Chase hauling in massive touchdowns. You have a strong rushing attack with 140 yards on the ground, averaging 4.5 yards per attempt. This was the offense we've been expecting from Cincinnati, and we kind of got against the Kansas City Chiefs a couple of weeks ago, but this was basically the Bengals offense we were expecting out of the gate here. Now, with so much drama kind of slowing things down, I would argue at the beginning of this season here, they had an opportunity in what is like a get-right game against the Panthers to get right, and they did. But again, that defense is definitely something to keep an eye on because they are allowing a ton of points per game right now, near the top in the NFL. So something to keep an eye on here, but I do like that they finally got the win that they needed, and hopefully this puts them in the right direction and towards a potential playoff berth, because that was the expectation for this team coming into the season, and 0-4 was not going to be the way they got there. They had to get a win this week, and it was probably tighter than you wanted it to be, but they got the job done. Moving into the Jeff Fisher category, those teams hovering around somewhere around 500, maybe just on the outside of the playoffs looking in. At number 21, we have ourselves the Denver Broncos. The Colts are at 20. At 19, we're looking at the Raiders. The Cowboys at 18. The Packers at 17. Saints at 16. And the Eagles at 15. Every single one of these teams are currently sitting at a record of 2-2. And to be honest with you, there is a lot of reorganizing you could do with this group here because of their records and just where they all are as certain teams. You could probably argue the Broncos are good where they are at the bottom of this group here, but when it comes to from the Colts to the Eagles, you could really shuffle them around in just about any order and or close to any order, and you have a case most likely. The Broncos, though, at 2-2 in a very unlikely scenario, rain game. It was not pretty. They come in, and it's the defense again, and I've been talking about them every single week now. 3rd highest pressure rate in the NFL. They are number 2 in sacks behind only Minnesota. They got 5 sacks on Aaron Rodgers in this game alone. They are able to keep this team in it and keep them fighting. Bo Nix literally completed his, 9 passes. I forget what the number was, but he finished the day with 60 yards passing and only a singular touchdown. Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin, a big reason why they were able to ultimately rack in a singular touchdown and just keep the game within reach for them the entirety of the time. They averaged about 5 yards per attempt with 110 or so yards on the ground here. They played good, clean football offensively. They didn't make any massive mistakes that shot them in the foot, and ultimately you come out victorious. The defense holds on strong. This is one of those things that doesn't feel super sustainable with the way the offense has looked in Denver, but that defense over there, led by Pat Surtain in the secondary, I love what they're doing defensively. I really hope that the offense can turn a corner by at least the midpoint of the season, because this is a team that, again, if things really break their way, 8-9, 9-8, sneaking around, sniffing a potential number 7 seed in the playoffs, but everything has to break their way. But that defense is very much up to the task. And if the offense can just catch up to where that defense is, this is another team that could be an absolute problem. The Colts at 2-2 at number 20 here. I think Anthony Richardson's consistency is definitely something that needs to be talked about here. He is such a boom and bust kind of guy, and it's unfortunate because if we could see more of the boom, this is a guy that is worth every bit of that. What was it, number 4 overall selection that he was last year? I think it was number 4 that he got drafted. I'm a Colts fan and I'm forgetting, but Anthony Richardson going as high as he did, when you see those big, massive plays, you go, oh my God, this is like what you're hoping for. But then you see some of the mistakes he's making, whether it's poor decisions or just like flat out inaccurate throws. It makes you want to like put your head through a window. He's hurt again now with what initially everyone seemed to think was a hip pointer, but now it sounds like it's a couple of different things. It's like an abdominal strain and then something with his leg too. So a couple of things going on there. Joe Flacco and Jonathan Taylor ultimately taking over this game, though, against Pittsburgh, proving to be a lethal combination, which I can't even believe I'm saying that. Joe Flacco and Jonathan Taylor. Joe Flacco is old enough to probably be Jonathan Taylor's dad. That's how long Joe Flacco's been around the block in the NFL. The guy's 39 going on 40. It's just crazy. And I believe that prior to the game or post game, that press conference, not press conference, but the interview he had after the game, he mentioned he's 8 days older or younger, one of the two, than Anthony Richardson's mom. Joe Flacco's been around for a while, and I can't believe that this is the quarterback running back combination I sat and watched lead the Colts to a victory here in 2024. But here we are. Defense started out extremely hot, started to show their issues in the second half. Again, another one of those teams that I don't really know how sustainable they are in the current state that they are. They have so many injuries on defense. We'll see what they do, but at 2-2, sitting at number 20, somewhere around that middle of the pack mark is what I'm okay with Indy. The Raiders at 19. The quarterback situation is obviously still an issue, and that's not really going to change in my opinion here. Thankfully, you found success on the ground again this week. 7 different players all running with the football, racking up a football field and a half and some change. You played a great game defensively. You allowed 10 points in the first half. You're lucky, or not even first half, it was first quarter rather, but you're lucky the Amari Cooper touchdown ultimately amounts to nothing because it gets called back off of the penalty. But the defense continuing to play really good games. This is without Max Crosby, who was sitting on his couch tweeting away during this game here. This is, again, one of those teams that is just, the Raiders play for their coaching staff. They play for Antonio Pierce. They will battle and battle and battle their way 60 minutes of football. Last week, definitely not a pretty loss for them, but ultimately to come back this week and in the situation that they were in, all things considered injury-wise, no Devontae Adams, no Max Crosby, you get the job done. You take down a Cleveland Browns team that's kind of in their own way right now. Good win for them, to say the least. Cowboys at number 18. Wasn't pretty, but it was enough. You hold the Giants to 5 field goals. Offense looked pretty good in the first half. You get a couple of touchdowns. You put 14 points on the board. Second half, though, inability to finish drives. Things start to slow down. You're lucky that, fortunately for you, the Giants' offense is where it is currently right now, where it is Malik Neighbors, and that's just about it for them at this current moment here. But it's a tough win to celebrate. I don't really know how you come out of this game watching DeMarcus Lawrence go down, who it sounds like he's going to be gone for at least the next 6 games, potentially even more. And then you also have Micah Parsons on top of that, who we'll see what happens with his injury. It doesn't sound like it's as severe. I think I saw a mild ankle sprain, something like the high ankle sprain. I don't really know what's mild about a high ankle sprain, but I guess not as severe as some other ones. But to come out of that game watching your 2 top edge rushers go down, you hope that they're back sooner rather than later, and that maybe Micah Parsons, with this mini bye week you have going on here, gets back and doesn't even have to miss time. He gets 10 days, but a bittersweet victory, I guess you could say. Things are not perfect in Dallas, but a game you should have been winning, and you ultimately got the W in. Packers at 2-2. Jordan Love's return, filled with good, filled with bad, filled with just about everything in between. You finished the game 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, nearly 400 yards passing. It was messy, but it's promising because you get your guy back. You see your offense honestly, in the second half, really take it to a defense that has been kind of a nightmare for opposing offenses to this point here. Defense even buckled down in the second half. If that team could just play 4 quarters that way, we're probably having a very different conversation about where Green Bay and Minnesota fit in the NFC power structure, but those early offensive mistakes just putting you in a hole. The first half interceptions from Jordan Love, clearly he had rust to be knocked off, and that's kind of what it felt like. It felt like a guy just kind of getting his groove back in, and you're going up against a defense that is just extremely aggressive up front, especially when it comes to rushing the passer. They're one of the best in the league at doing it. They lead the league in sacks right now, so it was kind of inevitable that was going to happen. Maybe I didn't expect 2 picks and how bad it maybe got at certain points early in that game, but he did a great job battling back. I'm not super worried about where Green Bay is right now, but they are sitting at 2-2 in a little bit of a tough spot, so we'll see where they go from here. But for them to be sitting at 2-2 at this point in the season, having not had Jordan Love the last couple of weeks, that is a great thing to think, but the other thing that is a weird thing to think of is that they are currently 0-2 with Jordan Love on the football field and 2-0 with Malik Willis. I know we're not going to have a quarterback controversy. I would not sit here and act like that, especially with how much Jordan Love's getting paid, but that is a weird thing to say out loud. 2-0 with Malik Willis and 0-2 with Jordan Love under center. Riddle me that, huh? The Saints at 2-2, sitting at number 16 here, the middle of the NFL team for me right now. Mistakes just ultimately killing this team here. You had the muffed punt. You had Derek Carr's pick 6. You left way too much time on the clock for the Falcons to get into position to ultimately kick that game-winning field goal. This is one of those teams that's... They could realistically be 3-1 right now, and honestly, after what we saw from Philadelphia this past week, you wonder how the hell they're not 4-0 if they get that, if they ultimately close out this game against the Falcons. The Saints are in a weird spot where getting in their own way and having very bizarre struggles against teams that are having a lot of their own, and I'm looking at you, Eagles fans. Weird situation for the Saints to be in right now. A team that's sitting at 2-2 that could very well be 3-1, and if they didn't have the issues they had last week, could very well be 4-0, and we'd be having a far different conversation. Right above them, though, the Eagles at 15, 2-2 themselves. Huge performance last week, especially defensively, just kind of folding in this game here. The muff punt obviously did not help the situation that they found themselves in early here, but Jalen Hurts now is sitting on 5 total fumbles this season, and that's not specifically like fumbles lost, but just having dropped the football out of his hands 5 different times now to this point in the season. He's had 9 fumbles every single season so far in his career. He's already sitting at 5, and we are 4 weeks into the season. There's plenty more games for him to potentially drop the football, not to mention the interceptions he's thrown as well. The team fell behind so fast, you couldn't really utilize Saquon Barkley. The Eagles are in a tough spot, and listening to Eagles fans and seeing what they have to say about the current state of the franchise is a very interesting thing, because I feel like you have fans all over the spectrum of what should be happening with the Eagles going forward. Like, we already have people calling for his job, and then I'm seeing other people, defending him to the death. It's interesting, to say the least, where Philadelphia is right now. I like them at 15, just outside the playoff hopefuls, because there is so much talent on that roster, and if they could just get their wide receivers back and healthy, this could be a team in a much different situation. So keep an eye on Philadelphia. Tough spot right now, but give it a few more weeks, and I think we'll be talking in a better light with them, but we'll see. Moving into the playoff hopefuls now, the teams that are in the playoffs. And remember, this is in the playoff hunt, in my opinion, and also on top of that, there has to be 7 AFC and 7 NFC teams. So if you see some of the teams that are in this grouping and you go, all right, I'd probably have a couple of teams down below above them, the way the top 2 groups form themselves out, both the playoff hopefuls and the Super Bowl contenders, there has to be 7 AFC and NFC teams, which is the oddity of doing a tier list, but I like it. It makes it a little bit more challenging to try to organize these teams out. It's fun. Looking at the hopefuls, at number 14, the Chargers. At 13, the Jets. At number 12, the 49ers. The Falcons at 11. Commanders at 10. Buccaneers at 9. Bills at number 8, the Ravens at 7, Steelers at 6, and the Seahawks at number 5. So the Chargers at 2-2, the way I look at this team right now, they just need to be healthy. If they're healthy, this team potentially steals a win from the Chiefs. Obviously, this is all hypotheticals, but I mean, you go into this game, you're missing your left tackle, you're missing your right tackle. On top of that, Justin Herbert's hobbled. Your defense is missing players as well. Derwin James got suspended for this game, so keep that in mind as well. He's one of the leaders on that defense for you. It makes the run game obvious. That's what you're going to try to lean into. You didn't find a bunch of success doing that on the ground as well. If this team is healthy, the defense held on for 4 quarters in this matchup here and ultimately finally cracked late in the game and is what cost you the potential victory here. If this team is healthy, they're in a much better spot. It's just really unfortunate that the injury bug bit them when they did, and you also lost Derwin James to a suspension. If all that's not happening, again, another one of those teams we're probably having a vastly different conversation about. The Jets at 2-2, my goodness, ugly game. Again, I understand the weather, I get that, but the Broncos, They were 1 point better than you, and I can't believe we're sitting here talking about a Jets loss right now. Ultimately, Greg Zuerlein misses that field goal late in the fourth quarter, which is what you needed to take that go-ahead lead, and to be honest with you, if they make that field goal, I don't really know how Denver, based off of just offensive production, not even from just them, but both sides, both teams, no one was really finding too much success here, how the Broncos come away with a victory in that game here. So this is not the place I expected the Jets to be in, but I still feel like I need to keep them in playoff hopefuls, and the Chargers as well, because when I look at the AFC teams that are below them right now, I don't really know if I can personally just rationalize any of those teams to be above them and in this category at this very moment. While I think, they have their flaws, I trust their quarterback situation. And like for the Chargers, if they're just healthier, I feel a lot better about them. And I don't want to sit here and say that, if the game wasn't as messy as it was weather-wise, the Jets win that game. I would not say that, because based off the way that game shook itself out, who knows what Denver could have looked like if the weather was better as well. I just feel like right now, where things stand, I like the Chargers and Jets as the two bottom teams in the AFC at this moment. The 49ers at 2-2, sitting at number 12. Probably a bit of an overreaction with me throwing them down to number 20 last week, but that was just one of those heed the moment type of things. I'm willing to look on that and go, yeah, bit of an overreaction. I will say, good win for them, getting a lot of their guys back this week. You come in, I believe you're minus 10.5, minus 10 favorites. I forget what it was exactly that the gambling sites all had them settled at when the game finally kicked off, but you're supposed to beat this team by at least 10 points. You beat them by, 17? And this is a good, comfortable win over the New England Patriots that you're supposed to have, especially being at home. You have them traveling out to the West Coast of you guys. There was never really a moment where I felt like, even like with the muffed kickoff, or the fumble on the kickoff, not the muffed kickoff, but the fumble on the kickoff that you had to start the second half, even with like the Patriots getting that, scoring the touchdown to cut the lead 20-10, it wasn't like I was sitting there shaking in my boots. As somebody who lives in New England, I see what's going on with the Patriots firsthand, so I'm not going to sit here and worry about them breaking that lead any further than the way they did. So 49ers get a good, comfortable win here. Fred Warner injury, definitely something to keep an eye on here. The last thing you need is for guys to be getting healthy and then other guys stepping out. Hopefully, it's not anything serious. The Christian McCaffrey situation is obviously not ideal right now. It sounds like he's dealing with that Achilles tendonitis in both of his legs, not just one. So if that entire situation could not have get any worse, it did. So we'll see what happens there. But at this point, I don't really know how you can count on Christian McCaffrey coming back. And Jordan Mason, for what it's worth, I mean, what is he, like 450 yards at this point through 4 games? Like, he's crushing it. He's crushing. He has the second most rushing yards, I believe, through 4 games to start a season for the 49ers, behind only Christian McCaffrey last year. So Jordan Mason's been huge for this offense in the absence of Christian McCaffrey. Looking at number 11 with the Falcons sitting there at 2-2 as well. Big game for the defense, for the special teams. Pick 6 was massive. The recovered muff punt for 6 as well. You basically got effort from everybody in this game. Your offense, your defense, your special teams. It was as complete of a game as you could possibly ask for. Younghoe Koo bangs the 58, career long for him for the W. The offense did enough when it mattered most. It was not a perfect day for the offense by any means, and this Falcons offense has definitely been in a position where they are struggling at times to really sort themselves out and I think find their true identity and just get into a real good rhythm. So once they can figure that out, this is a team that I think can compete. I like them as a team in the NFC playoff picture. And going forward, if they can just find a way to generate some pressure on defense, this could be a really scary team. But they have a couple of flaws right now. One of them being they just can't seem to find a true rhythm on offense. The second one being they are one of the worst at creating pressure for opposing quarterbacks. And if they can get better on that front, this is a far scarier Falcons team. At 10, we're looking at the 3-1 Washington Commanders here. Jaden Daniels, through 4 weeks, Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate, and arguably even for Offensive Player of the Year. I don't really know too many other guys that you could sit here and pound the table for winning those awards over him. Jaden Daniels is running away with Offensive Rookie of the Year, in my opinion, at the very least. Offensive Player of the Year, hell, even like MVP is like, it's very much in the discussion. I know a lot of people are looking at Sam Darnold, and if the season ended today, he's probably getting the award, but Jaden Daniels has made a case through 4 weeks because this offense in Washington was not supposed to be this good right out of the gates, even though a lot of people were excited about what he brought to the table. It was not supposed to be like this. Couple that with the fact that the defense looked a lot better this week compared to how it did last week. The defensive front did a really good job of disrupting Kyler Murray, keeping him contained, and he wasn't really able to do all the crazy stuff that he does with his legs the way he typically does here. They shut things down on the defensive side, and I've been worried about the Commanders' defense all season to this point here. So this is a good step in the right direction. Washington's a legit threat, and they're sitting atop of the NFC East right now. And I know that Eagles, Cowboys, and even Giants fans are probably all sitting there looking at me sideways going, this guy thinks the Commanders are better than us. At this moment in time, the Commanders have looked by far, not even like conversationally, by far the best team in the division. I'm sorry. So we'll leave it at that. You can fight about that in the comment section down below, but Commanders have definitively, to this point, looked like the best team in the NFC East, and it's not really close. The Buccaneers at number 9, sitting at 3-1. Big win for them over the Eagles, a much-needed win on top of that after what was a dumpster fire of a performance last week against Denver. Baker Mayfield going for nearly 350 yards, couple of touchdowns. Felt like he was playing a little bit more inspired, and I wonder if it had that, those things go, the quote, I guess you should say, that came from Tom Brady in regards to what he was saying about Baker Mayfield. Now, I don't know what to make of all that because he and Brady seemed fine after the game. I think it's just a little bit of the media pushing stuff out, players hearing things, Tom Brady being the guy that he is. Like, of course he's going to have some sort of rebuttal to that, but I don't really think it's really worth any, like, it's not really worth the conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like, media just kind of spinning more drama than needed, in my opinion. Running game looked pretty solid, looking at nearly 100 yards and a touchdown from your 2-star running backs here. You locked up that game early. To be honest with you, you came out, defense shut it down, 3 straight 3-and-outs to begin the game. Your offense comes out, touchdown, take advantage of a mistake, touchdown. You get a 21-0 lead, and you basically never looked back. This was a dominating performance and one that Tampa Bay definitely needed after last week. The Bills taking a really ugly loss on Sunday Night Football, and I hate this because I wanted a competitive game between the Ravens and the Bills, but the issue that I think we came across, obviously with the Ravens bulldozing them on the ground for nearly 300 yards, you're looking at 2 3/4 of a football field with 271 yards rushing allowed. The Bills went through injuries early prior to the season even starting and losing a decent amount of personnel just on defense as a whole this offseason. And I think it finally got exposed going up against an offense like Baltimore's. I don't want to sit here and make excuses or make it sound like I'm making excuses for Buffalo. That's not what I'm doing. I think that they did, in fact, get a little bit exposed in this game because of the losses and the injuries that they've been dealt with to this point in the season. So hats off to Baltimore for what they did. Again, I'm not making an excuse. I'm just pointing out the fact that Baltimore did what the first 3 opponents were not able to do, and that was bring to light some of the issues that they might have on defense there in Buffalo, because that offense and what they're doing in Baltimore right now is getting a little bit out of hand. That being said, at 7, the Ravens, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Justice Hill, a 1-2-3 punch combination at running back. And this is a team that still has in their back pockets Keaton Mitchell. For those of you who don't remember, the fantasy football darling himself, Keaton Mitchell, that guy's got blow you away type of speed. Good luck catching him kind of speed. You look at the way that offense is working. Lamar Jackson, whatever you think about him as a quarterback and his desire to run the football more than anything else, it is all about winning for him. He is one of the most selfless players in the NFL. He does not give 2 craps about his stats. It's about winning the way he thinks he knows how and the way he thinks is best for this team. And these last 2 weeks, the way that they have moved the football has been outstanding to watch. And if this is going to be the Ravens show from here on out, where Lamar, Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, and if Keaton Mitchell gets back at some point and he can join in on the fun there, how on earth are you going to stop a four-headed monster in the backfield because you can rotate guys out. You have literally 3 running backs that you can go to that can tote the rock very effectively. I don't really know what to make of that offense. The defense on top of that looked really good in this game here. They basically turned Buffalo into a one-dimensional opponent. They shut down things with James Cook. He was not able to move the football the way he has been the last few weeks. He's just been torching defenses. They bottled him up. He was not really able to get anything going. And then someone I need to shout out here is the ageless man himself, Kyle Van Noy, who, for whatever reason, despite where he is in his career right now, is still racking up tackles for loss, sacks, like you name it. He is still contributing. And this is one of those signings that I know people made fun of and that people did not really take seriously, but he has come in now and he has integrated himself and became a legit dude in that defense. So hats off to Kyle Van Noy for proving some of those naysayers wrong. But the Ravens are looking good at 2-2. Steelers at number 6. You look at this game, and it was like a tale of two halves offensively. They started out really slow. They figured it out in the second half here, but that first half, you had the turnover on downs. You had a fumble that killed drives, and ultimately you find a way, you put it all together in the second half. You get your 24 points there. Justin Fields finishes the day with 360 total yards and 3 touchdowns altogether. If it wasn't for Joe Flacco just being the enigma that he is in his late stages of 38, 39 years old now, coming into the league and just creating problems for all these defenses for whatever that reason may, I would love to know the reason for that. If it's just because who he used to go up against was maybe tougher defenses than what he's seeing now, I don't really know. The Joe Flacco thing is weird. And if it wasn't for that, something tells me the Steelers maybe pull off this win here, but Joe Flacco is just an enigma at this point, and for whatever reason, he's given defenses fits, he's given them problems, and the Steelers just could not figure it out. Also, probably missing Alex Highsmith right now, as we're now seeing what the Steelers look like without him. TJ Watt, pretty quiet day for him as well, so not the greatest day for the Pittsburgh Steelers altogether, but they're still 3-1. They still have a great defense, and even in a loss, Justin Fields still looked pretty damn good. And at this point, what is Russell Wilson even doing there? I don't know. This is Justin Fields' job. I don't know how you could ever bench him and put Russell Wilson in. I understand the whole you're not supposed to lose your job to injury thing, but with the way that this Steelers team looks right now, you can't make that switch anymore. It just does not make sense to me. And the Seahawks, sitting at number 5, even in a loss, they actually moved up in the power rankings this week because they proved their worth. One of the big questions I had about Seattle was just where they stood amongst the top teams in the NFL, having faced a pretty weak three-week stretch here, going up against what was the Broncos, the Patriots, and then the Miami Dolphins last week. So you finally have a legitimate an opponent that people look at as a Super Bowl contender, and they hung around. Right now, where it stands, the Lions and a handful of other teams, and we'll talk about them in a second, they all stand a cut above the rest, in my opinion, here. But for Seattle to come in, especially in Detroit as well, the way that they played, the defense finally met their match in what was a pretty competitive offense. You're also coming in with a pretty battered, you had like 4 starters missing. Julian Love went down in the game as well. So they finally kind of met their match in an offense that is absolutely rolling right now. So it was a great effort. Kenneth Walker comes back. He has 3 touchdowns on the ground. This is just one of those things where you have a team that's been playing really well against some lower tier opponents, and you finally come up against a team that is literally vying for a Super Bowl shot right now and potentially hosting the NFC's road to the Super Bowl. And maybe you get caught off guard. Mike Macdonald, also a rookie head coach, felt like the first time it really felt like he was a rookie head coach in this game here. But this was, just a tough spot for Seattle to be, all things considered, injury-wise, but they hung around there. They fought to the very end. It was an entertaining contest. I still think that they are very much in the thick of things, though. They're still sitting at 3-1 amongst the best in the NFL, and they at least proved their worth in the loss. And then finally, moving into the top of the league, the top 4 teams, the Super Bowl contenders category. At number 4, we're looking at the Houston Texans. At number 3, the Detroit Lions. At number 2, the Minnesota Vikings. And at number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Texans at 3-1, really tight scary game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But really good teams, when they find themselves in a pickle like that, they come out and they win those games. And this was the type of game you wanted to see the Texans pull out, because nobody gave the Jaguars a shot with the situation that they're currently in right now. And you find yourself down, you need a touchdown to win. Defense comes up huge with 3 straight stops, despite your offense not being able to do anything after all those stops, except for the last one, coming up with 3 straight stops. The big thing for the Texans, I think, right now, offensively, is that they miss Joe Mixon. He needs to get back. He needs to be healthy. They have not been able to run the football the same way they did those first couple of weeks when he was in there. Nico Collins, very good at football. That guy is an absolute stud. And it's funny because it felt like he really did come out of nowhere. He pops up last year as C.J. Stroud makes his monster rookie debut. And now, with a year under his belt working alongside C.J. Stroud, they are just continuing to tear it up. And he and C.J. Stroud are like a match made in heaven the way they're playing together. C.J. Stroud's an absolute stud. I'm so glad he's having the success he's having in his second year, because the amount of people that were saying everyone knows the Texans are coming, you know, the sophomore slump for C.J. Stroud at 3-1 in the position that they're in right now, not really seeing any of that. Sorry, haters, but not really seeing any of that. And again, I'm a Colts fan, and I'm able to see that. The Lions at number 3, full steam ahead for this offense. Full steam ahead. You see the way this team is playing right now. Defensively, not necessarily the best game. You were letting a lot of things happen for the majority of that game, but the defense came up big when it mattered most in that fourth quarter. A lot of pass breakups coming up. They finished the game with 9 altogether, but a lot of them coming in really big spots on those final few drives. But you look at what Gibbs, Montgomery, St. Brown, and Goff are all doing together, like that quartet of guys, coupled with Jamison Williams now, who's really popping off on this offense as well. This unit is on another level right now. They can beat you in a submission on the ground. Jared Goff, 18 of 18, 292 yards, couple of touchdowns. He even caught a touchdown pass from Amon-Ra St. Brown. Come on, give me a break. This was one of the best offensive performances we've seen from a team this season, period, in my opinion, and maybe even extending back into even like last season. For Goff to go perfect, for every single one of you that doubted Jared Goff, who would call him a mid-quarterback or not even like a top 10 kind of guy, Jared Goff put on an absolute show on Monday Night Football for all of you. I've always been a guy that likes Jared Goff. It was really unfortunate the way things ended for him in LA, but obviously it was clear Sean McVay was looking for a different style of quarterback that fit his offense more in the big-armed Matthew Stafford. Jared Goff, though, when he is on a roll, he is on a roll. And this is not the first time we've seen this. Go back to the year that the Rams went to the Super Bowl and played the Patriots. That same season, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league then. This is not the first time Jared Goff has looked like this. So open your eyes if you're still doubting Goff. The guy is legit, and he's got another team that is hell-bent on helping him lead this group to a Super Bowl championship. At number 2, the Minnesota Vikings 4-0. It definitely got scary at the end of that game. Don't get me wrong. Things got a little bit wonky late. Sam Darnold, couple of turnovers. Defense was reeling. It got scary. But again, like I said, same thing I said about the Texans. When you find yourself in one of those tough situations where you're maybe letting a game slip away, or, you know, the opponent that you're playing probably shouldn't be playing up to the level that they are to you, whatever the situation may be, you still find a way to win that football game, and that is what the Vikings did. The best teams in the league will typically come away in victories, even if they're in a situation where they were that far ahead, let a team crawl back, and rather than dropping the game, they finish it off. They're able to rally and win. That is how I look at it. Darnold, hot and cold kind of day. I don't want to say that this is where things go off the rails, but again, in the back of my mind, I still have my concerns about Sam Darnold just because of what I've seen from him in the past. And I know it's not the same. And I've had people pounding the table about this to me. I know it's not the same situation. I know he's in a different offense with a much better head coach. I understand the entire situation is completely different. Thank you. I know what the Jets are all about. I've watched them for the entirety of my life growing up in New England. But that being said, I have also gotten to witness plenty of Sam Darnold, and we've seen now a couple of just iffy mistakes the last couple of weeks from him. Just hopefully that goes away. That's all I'm saying. Vikings are killing it right now. Brian Flores has turned this defense into one of the scariest units in the NFL. Protect the ball. That's all I'm saying. And then at number 1, the Chiefs sitting at 4-0. Another week, another Chiefs win. Always finding ways to win. And whether it's through offense, through defense, whatever it may be, these Chiefs are getting it done. Yet another big throw and catch from Mahomes to Xavier Worthy. Kareem Hunt has rejoined the team after years away from them. He looked pretty good on top of that. Potentially a guy that'll make the loss of Isaiah Pacheco not be as detrimental to what they're trying to do offensively. The Rashee Rice injury obviously really sucks. That is one of those things we'll have to keep an eye on. It seems like there is a lot of uncertainty surrounding what the injury actually is. So we'll see what happens there, because initially it sounded like everyone was on the board of it's a torn ACL, but now there sounds like there's uncertainty surrounding it. So we'll see what happens, but just one of those weird situations, I guess. Defensively, bent a bit in the first quarter, let up those 10 points. But after that, money. Shut it down, did what they did. Chris Jones, disruptive force the way he is, racked up a couple of sacks on his own. But the defense is littered with so much young and up-and-coming talent. They're not guys that you will sit there and think those are big-name, big-ticket guys. No, not household names, but you have a ton of really young, good talent mixed in with a nice small blend of veteran leadership over there. The Chiefs are the best team in the league. I took them out of number 1 last week like a dummy. I regret that. They are back at number 1 where they belong. All is now restored in the world. Chiefs at the top of the mountain for another week of NFL. That all being said, those are my power rankings coming out of week number 4, heading into week number 5. Let me know in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts? Let me hear your power rankings. But that is it for me. If you made it to the end, as always, greatly appreciate it. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.